Well, welcome all to the first panel of the day. Background, it's the Youth Day today, so we have five youth, and myself, I'm also under 35, so like to somehow count myself as a youth. But we're giving the youth perspective on the nuclear phase outs that are happening in Taiwan, Germany, Belgium, and Spain, and how that nuclear phase out squares in a world of increasing climate change risk and concern. So I'm Richard, your host. I'm from the UK, where we've got our own phase out, but that's fortunately being met by new nuclear power plants. Today, you're going to hear about phase outs in other countries. So if we're going to go from left to right, starting with Angelica, if you could all just introduce yourselves, where you're from, and give a bit of background about the nuclear phase out in your country.
Hi, everybody. I'm Angelica from Taiwan, and I am about as old as the nuclear power plants in Taiwan. So I would say I'm very youthful because they are coming up on their midlife extensions, but they indeed have so much more clean baseload to give. In the 80s, in fact, Taiwan was running on 50% nuclear power, although that has really dwindled. And the current government still wants to phase it all out by 2025. It's my mission to tell the people of Taiwan and convince the government that this is not a good idea because we're a small country and we cannot decarbonize fully without nuclear power. And I think coming to COP, it's been really, really inspiring to see so many countries try to get on the nuclear train. And I think it's really important that Taiwan doesn't get off because it might be a long time to get on it again.
Thank you. And if throughout the panel anyone has any questions, do put your hand up. Oh, we've got a question straight up already.
Thank you for sharing your stories. And it's also very interesting to see from different geographical areas how you have the same problem, the phase out of the nuclear capacity. And here my question is, how did you compensate, especially in Germany, the closed, phased out nuclear power plants? You still have the electricity demand, right? Especially the winter. Now it is cold in Germany. Also the same in Belgium, same in Spain. How do you compensate that? Thank you.
I'd love to add to that because Germany's story is so much like Taiwan. When President Tsai took over in 2016, she decided to go full scale, all speed ahead on renewable energy, building solar, building offshore wind. And we did build a lot of those capacities. But the problem is, every time she closes the reactor, that would set us back. We would build a lot of renewables to bring that clean energy back again, but then another reactor would close. So we were spending a lot of money and wasting a lot of time just to stay in the same place. And when President Tsai leaves office at the end of the year, she is going to leave Taiwan after being in power 8 years with a dirtier grid. And it's not just dirtier, it's more fragile because when you replace nuclear power with renewables, it's not a one-to-one. And so Taiwan is also facing a power crunch in addition to not doing much on decarbonization. And yet she's still seen as a green power president, and she made a pledge for Taiwan to go net zero by 2050. And to me, that's unbelievable because we've actually gone backwards under her watch. So that makes me really sad.
Hi, all. Thanks for being here. Fun panel. I was wondering to what you all ascribe the rationale that the Green parties and various folks who aren't yet sold on nuclear, why aren't they yet supportive? What are the various reasons for that?
I'd like to add to that, it's so true that the accident of history still haunts us today. Because in Taiwan, the nuclear power plants were built under Chiang Kai-shek, who was a dictator, and his opposition really coalesced around anti-nuclear because they were somehow the issue of nuclear mingled with the dictatorship. So he built the plant, so he got associated with them. And the opposition parties, unfortunately, really coalesced into a party in 1986, the year of Chernobyl. So that was in the air, so to speak. So it got written into the constitution. So ever since then, you've had this totally accidental and arbitrary line where the DPP, which is the party in charge right now and likely to be in charge, are anti-nuclear just because they used to be anti-nuclear. That is something that I personally really want to change. And then on the other side, of course, the KMT is pro-nuclear because they were pro-nuclear. I really want to break that association because there's something within the values of both parties to be pro-nuclear. With the DPP, it's their pro-environment. They want to take care of Taiwan and make Taiwan safe also, because right now Taiwan's very reliant on natural gas, which is not good for national security. And within the KMT, they're a very pro-business party, and so of course they should continue to support nuclear.
Great, and we're here to talk about fighting those nuclear phase-outs. So I think we're going to go from left to right again, and I want to hear about sort of the advocacy that you're doing in your country and that others are doing to help stop these phase-outs.
Yes, absolutely. In Taiwan, as in many countries, the mind of the people have changed ahead of that of the politicians. We have a decent base of support to draw from, but now it's come down to how do we change the mind of the hardcore people who are still in power, and how do we break out of this partisan divide? I believe that we have a really critical window of opportunity that's coming up for Taiwan because we still have 2 nuclear power plants that are operational, and life extension for those plants are essential, not just for the grid strength of Taiwan, but also to keep nuclear energy alive and to keep the talent pool alive, keep the supply chain alive and ready for the next generation of nuclear. We have an election right now happening in January. We will know who the new president will be. And no matter who it is, I'm going to follow the same plan. I'm going to write a report that catalogs the energy resources we have in Taiwan and what the scenarios will be if we follow these different paths. And I hope that a new administration of whatever party is a great chance for a reset. And Taiwan can actually go in 2 very different directions. You know, if we go for the nuclear exit by 2025, we continue down this road, it's going to be bad because we're a manufacturing powerhouse. And everybody here has a cell phone that probably has a chip in it that comes from Taiwan. They rely on a huge amount of power, and it has to be very stable. So if we lose those nuclear power plants, I predict Taiwan's going to go down the path of less industrialization, and that's going to be very bad. But if we do decide to turn the corner, there's actually tremendous potential for in Taiwan to not just keep the existing power plants, but to turn on more. And SMRs will be a very good fit for the kind of intense industrial production that is going on in the science parks of Taiwan. So fingers crossed.
Was there any other questions from the crowd? Oh, over here.
Good afternoon. I've just joined. I'm an ecological economist, by the way. I'm not necessarily against nuclear, but what's driving you? Are you working for a nuclear industry or are you in industry?
I am actually a reporter in offshore wind. And I started working in energy because I believe it was the most important topic of our time. And when I first got into offshore wind, I was so passionate about it. I really thought this is what we have to do to save the world. Even though I'm an offshore wind reporter and I gained some prominence in Taiwan for doing that, I realized that it wasn't going to solve our problem. Offshore wind and solar, because it is an intermittent source of energy, that's why at a cost of great professional sacrifice to myself, because the renewables network people are not very accepting of nuclear energy. I had to come out of the closet and say, yes, I am pro-nuclear. And I come to COP and I'm doing this. And of course, I hope to report on nuclear energy in the future. I advocate and make that my living. But I'm doing this at a professional cost because I really do believe that this is the answer for us. This is what we need to actually decarbonize.
I think the 3 standout countries I know about are Japan, South Korea and Sweden. All those 3, they had lots of nuclear. They politically decided to reduce their nuclear, and now they've changed their minds again and want nuclear again. And Sweden's decided to increase their nuclear capacity by something like 4 times.
2 large reactors by 2035 and 10 large reactors worth by 2045.
Yeah, and Japan wants to restart their old reactors, and South Korea is back to building reactors. Can we go through all of you guys and hear what the sort of messages of hope you hear from those countries and how you think that applies where you live?
I see a lot of hope basically because Taiwan doesn't have many alternatives. Our grid is going to falter if we go ahead and shut down those last new nuclear power plants. I think this will happen in time for sanity. What I hope doesn't happen is somehow we keep it together until we're like Germany and we shut it all down. The thing about nuclear is, as long as you keep that flame alive, we can get going again. But that's the message of hope I want to leave everybody with. The rubber's going to meet the road, and we're going to do the right thing. That's what I believe.
Just following up on your comment and your colleague, I'm interested to know what your thoughts are on how much bandwidth there is out there for the nuclear debate, because these arguments have gone round and round for decades and decades. We all know about how illogical the anti-nuclear position is, how much radioactivity there is in bananas or Brazil nuts, how sitting on an aeroplane gives you way more radioactivity than going in a nuclear power plant, or how you spectacle of nuclear workers dressed up in protective suits decontaminating waste, where the concentration of radioactivity in the bodies of the workers is higher than in the waste that they're decontaminating. These things are all out there. The argument has no logic, but is anyone interested? I mean, is there still a debate out there? I mean, of course, energy price instability might reanimate the argument. Might people think, yes, we really have to get energy right. Bad things happen if we get it wrong. So maybe, what are your thoughts on that? Is there a debate still there?
I'd also like to add to that it's up to us to come up with new narrative that increase the bandwidth for the discussion. For instance, as an advocate in Taiwan, of course, I understand that the fastest, in a way, the most consequential, highest leverage point action we can do is to do the life extensions for the existing nuclear power plants. But I also make sure I mention the next generation of nuclear because I want to give people that hope, and that elevates the conversation.
Session was on fighting nuclear phase outs in the name of climate change. I want to quickly get some closing remarks. If there's any questions in the crowd, you can ask them later. So final remarks. I want 5 words when you think your nuclear phase out will be ended and sort of how positive you are about the future.
I have big hopes for 2024. That's the year that I hope will at least get the 2 working nuclear power plants life extension. And then I just want to add that this is a global fight. And a victory anywhere for nuclear is actually a victory for all of us.
Good.